Welcome to episode 72 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I am your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from the Vault Studio on the beautiful campus of Grace College and Theological Seminary by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man whose electric razor keeps him up at night.
That's right. Yeah.
John Scott Sloat.
Doc, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
You know, the sun is shining. Students have left. Graduation has happened. It feels like all is right in the world right now.
Yes. We've transitioned from the academic semester into the summer phase of life.
Hallelujah.
Yes. So Summer John has been cited.
Summer John is here. Yeah.
My question is, though, is this going to be the summer of John?
Great question. I don't know.
I hope that works out better for you than it did for George Costanza.
Yeah.
In any case,
Well, if you're asking, am I getting fired and getting a 3-month severance package? Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Gotcha. So we would love for you as listeners to connect with us. You can find us on Twitter at V&S You can email the show, variousandsundrypodcast@gmail.com. You are still checking that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We had a little snafu.
We had a snafu 3 months ago, 2 months ago.
It might have been longer than that ago now, but
we got an email recently from Noah in Indiana. I think in Indiana.
Yeah.
I believe I shared that with you.
Yeah, asking for was that asking? No, maybe you did. I can't remember.
I don't know. Yeah.
In any case, you can check out our Facebook page, Various and Sundry Podcast. Give it a like, give it a follow. And we are available on YouTube. You can listen to episodes, and we do have 2 episodes that are video episodes.
Yeah.
We've got the Grace Story Podcast takeover that we did that was posted back in March.
Yeah, with Zach. That was great.
And we also have the video of our interview with Barnabas Piper from
just
a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, just a few weeks ago.
So if you have not seen those, we encourage you to check those out and go ahead and subscribe on YouTube to that as well. And we would love for you to leave a review and a rating on whatever platform you're accessing the show. And we are thrilled
pink
to report 2 new reviews this past week.
Yeah, pretty great.
Yeah.
Good reviews as well.
Yeah.
Earnest, truthful.
Yes. And 5-star, of course.
And 5-star,
yes. That's really the big key there.
Hashtag for the algorithm.
Indeed. Well, as we turn our attention now to sports, we have reached the end of the NBA regular season, and the playoff matchups are set. We're recording this week on Tuesday. So today, I think, is actually the start of the play-in games.
Okay.
I think tonight. And so I thought it would be good for us to talk a little bit about the NBA playoff matchups, the play-in games. I think we've figured out how this works, right? We had the pre-show conversation, right?
Yes. It sounds like the 7 and 8 seed play one another.
Yes.
The loser of that takes the winner. So the winner of that goes
into the 7th seed
into
spot.
the 7th seed spot. The loser of that plays the winner of 9-10.
Yeah.
And then the winner of that becomes the 8th seed.
Yes.
Is that your
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the East, you've got the Celtics at 7 against the Wizards at 8. And then you have the Pacers at 9 and the Hornets at 10. And in the West, you've got the Lakers at 7.
And the Warriors.
That's
a fun game.
At 8. And Grizzlies at 9, Spurs at 10.
And I think that Lakers-Warriors game tips off at like 10:15.
Oh, it's West Coast.
Oh, my goodness. That's so late.
You're not watching anyway.
I'm not watching anyway. But the playoffs, I might tune in. But it's 10 o'clock.
Yeah. By that point, you've been in bed, 2 hours?
Yeah, 2.5. Yeah.
Yeah, so I do love the NBA playoffs time because you have typically good matchups every night.
Yeah.
And that 7-8 game for the Lakers, I do think now that AD is back, LeBron is back, if those two can stay healthy, they can still make a deep run in the playoffs. The thing that scares you about them having to play the Warriors is the fact that, Steph Curry could just blow up and put up 50 on you.
He could get really hot and drop 40, 45. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but let's talk a little bit about your beloved Knicks.
Yeah.
What spot did they finish in?
The 4th seed.
Okay.
And we got the Hawks.
Yes. And I did see them play Sunday, where they hung on to beat a Celtics team that was not playing its top players. And they hung on. They built up a huge lead and then nearly blew it. But
I think the Celtics brought it within a point or two at one point. But I'm just pleased to be a part of things. As a Knicks fan, we haven't been in the playoffs since I think 2008. We haven't been this high in seeding maybe since well before that. And I think we made it in 2008, but I don't think we had made it, goodness, for a long time before that. And frankly, I'm just happy to be a part of things. And if we get bounced by the Hawks, that's okay. I am a little nervous we peaked too early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But just glad to be here.
Yeah. So if you do manage to get past the Hawks, you would almost certainly play the Sixers. It's unlikely as the 1 seed the Sixers are going to lose to whoever ends up being the 8.
Sure.
It seems unlikely.
Sure. Seems unlikely. Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Playoff basketball is different than regular season basketball. The intensity ratchets up, and coaching staffs can apply more focused attention to a particular opponent than they can during the regular season.
Yeah.
So that's where it'll be interesting to see how that shapes up. But good to see the Knicks back in the playoffs. Any thoughts on? I know this is kind of off the cuff, but who do you like coming out of the East? Who do you like coming out of the West?
Oh my goodness, I think I like the Sixers to come out of the East.
Okay.
I'm just not a believer that Brooklyn's going to remain healthy, and Milwaukee is Milwaukee.
So you're not sold on them?
No, and I'll take Denver out of the West.
Okay.
For no reason other than the Joker.
Yeah, I feel like this year's NBA playoffs could be as wide open as we've seen in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like we've just gone through this stretch where we've had the super teams, right? And it's just like, okay, so the super team's going to make it out of this side, and maybe the other conference is a little bit more up in the air. But you had the Heat for a while, and then you had the Cavs in the East with LeBron. And then, of course, in the West, once Durant went out there, I mean, even before that, though, you had Steph and Clay. So, the Warriors had the run where it's like, okay, they're going to go through the West. And then last year, the bubble was just a weird thing. So, but this year I feel like it's a little bit more wide open. I'll take out of the East. I'm going to roll the dice and say the Nets are going to be healthy enough.
Okay.
To get
Is that a concern of yours, though?
100%.
Okay.
I mean, who knows with James? I think if Durant stays healthy, if him and Kyrie, I think the two of them are good enough, plus their supporting cast, to get to the finals.
Okay.
Even without James Harden. In the West, I like your Nuggets pick if they had Jamal Murray, I would be all on board with them. But the fact that he's not going to be back for the playoffs, even though I think they're really good, I think it's just hard for me to go with them as coming out. But having said that, I don't know who to pick.
Yeah.
If the Lakers are healthy, they could easily get in to the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Do I believe in the Jazz? I don't know. I'm not convinced the Suns, having not made the playoffs in any recent memory, are suddenly going to run through the NBA.
Yeah, are going to light it up,
even with Chris Paul being great and Devin Booker. But so I guess if you're going to force me to pick somebody, I'll pick the Jazz. I guess.
Okay.
All right. What's going on with the Mets?
Did you see any headlines from the game last night?
Was there a player like a hit in the face? Was
yes.
that last night?
So our backup outfielder, Kevin Pillar, took I think it was 94-mile-an-hour fastball, I think to the bridge of his nose.
Ouch.
And
That sounds so awful.
yes. And I mean, just immediately goes to the ground, clutching his face. You can see
Had to be bloody as
oh
all
yeah.
get out.
Oh yeah. There's blood dripping all over the dirt and everything. So he got walloped in the face, and he picked himself up and walked off the field. That's a tough guy, Yeah.
So not a soccer player.
Not a soccer player,
did you
no.
see what I did there?
Yeah, you took a dig.
I'm going to get heat.
Yeah, Vince in marketing is going to be upset. But took a 94-mile, picked himself up, walked off, got an MRI last night. We're still waiting on news. But we ended up winning the game. However, our injury list right now is like 15 people long. Like we're missing 4 of our starting pitchers. Mm-hmm. We're missing 2 starting outfielders. We're missing our starting third baseman, starting second baseman. So, I saw a reporter joke that the Mets needs "Hello, my name is" stickers for the game because we just don't know who anybody is out there. And there's talks of trades just to get players to fill
the roster.
Yeah, to fill out the roster. So. Yeah, that's where things are. We're technically in first place right now, but who knows with all these injuries how long that's going to last.
Okay. Well, speaking of things that last.
Nice transition.
We are to our main topic for today. John, what are we talking about?
We're talking about biographies. Specifically reading them.
Okay. Not writing them.
Yes, not writing them or even TV documentaries of people's lives we're not talking about. We're talking about reading really, really excellent biographies. Doc, why do we go here? Why biographies?
Well, first we need content.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, in one sense, that's always the answer, right? But as we thought about what things we'd like to talk about is one of the things that we landed on was, I mean, obviously we love to read, and that's part of the ethos of this podcast, right? The fact that we enjoy reading and want to talk about books, but we wanted to talk about biographies because we just think they're incredibly helpful and valuable on a number of different fronts. Both, I think, on just a sort of personal enrichment front, as well as even they can be incredibly helpful on the spiritual front.
Yeah. I think there was I can't remember who said this, but there was an author who said reading biographies is just like nourishment for your soul. Mm-hmm. Like there is something that reading a really excellent biography of a Christian man, caveat, right, is just really nourishing to the soul.
Yeah, I don't know that it would even need to be specifically of a Christian, though. I mean, I think there's a lot, obviously, even from a spiritual perspective, we can learn from non-Christians.
Sure.
I mean, look at the proliferation of people of pastors who there seems to have been this wave recently of pastors reading Churchill biographies, Winston Churchill biographies, and dropping quotes into sermons and stuff like that. And so I think there can be some value to that. But so, John, why do you enjoy reading biographies? Let's make it a little personal here. What is it about biographies that you enjoy reading?
I was reflecting on that question. I don't know.
This does not make for good podcast content.
I know. So I think I was telling you before the podcast, I do enjoy oftentimes when teaching church history and working through church history, we talk in centuries or we talk in time periods or movements. And I think I enjoy getting into like the nitty-gritty of what was going on. Mm-hmm. So entering sort of a person's life from their perspective and seeing, oh goodness, the day-to-day about what was happening and the struggles that they had or the opportunities that they had or the things that they said no to. And those things I find really fascinating to get into an era. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think that along similar lines – at one level, I enjoy history, but often the way history is taught and told focuses on facts and events that can feel disjointed or even just kind of isolated. And biographies, when they're done well, take you back and put you in that world. And they also usually give you a glimpse into the personal life of people that otherwise you might just know as, oh, he was a great military leader.
Yeah.
But you might not know anything about his home life, his environment growing up in a specific family, or even his marriage or his kids or those kinds of things. And I think biographies have the ability to give us the more holistic picture of a person and move us away from the sort of flat, one-dimensional, this person is this kind of mentality.
Sure. Yeah, it takes you from, and goodness, do we have anybody? I don't think we have anybody on our list who signed the Declaration of Independence, but it takes you from John Hancock signed the Declaration of Independence to John Hancock grew up in this time period, and he did these things. He went to school here. He was involved in this business, and so it gives you a fuller picture of an individual.
Right, and I think that it reminds us that all human beings are complex. We like to simplify and to be pretty reductionistic, to be honest, in terms of how we think of a particular person. And we do this all the time. And, we do it in our sort of political and cultural contexts of talking about people, but even just, think back to growing up in junior high and high school. Let's just say high school, because hopefully by high school you're a little bit more aware of the world around you.
Yeah, you're aware of what's happening,
And think about how much, if anything, did you know about the personal lives of your teachers?
Yeah, for the most part, very little.
Yeah. They, in one sense, many of them were probably just one-dimensional to you. That's my math teacher.
Sure.
You didn't know if, you might have known – well, you probably knew, oh, she's married because she's a Mrs. Whatever last name. But – and you might have occasionally caught glimpses of actually, you know what, she's really into sewing or she's really into biking or something. Like you might occasionally get a glimpse of like a hobby or an interest.
So quick story. I had a history teacher in high school who made I think made such little money at the Christian high school I went to that he also worked as basically an usher at PNC Park in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And so he would leave school at like 2:30 every day during baseball season and drive down to PNC Park. And when I would go to games, I would seek him out at the stadium, and we'd sit there and we'd talk about the game, the team, and those things. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And so when you think about a good biography can give you the more holistic picture of a human being. And that to me raises the question of, and we've kind of hit at this, but maybe it'd be good to more focused talk about this. In your view, what is it that makes a good biography?
Yeah. So I think of something that, and this may be too obvious, but tells the story of the person without getting into the things I already know. So if we're going to talk about Lincoln's Secretary of War, which I've read that biography, I don't necessarily want to know specifically about the actions that I already know about. I want to know, like, what was his letters to his wife like, or what was his growing up situation, or those different things before we get into some of the more nitty gritty details of what happened, or I want to know some unique fact or something like that.
Yeah.
I think a well-written biography is oftentimes hard to come by, so I usually look for something that's a little bit more well-written. And then finally, I'd say I'm looking for something probably that I've heard about on a podcast or an author that I recognize or some cultural event that's happened that's sparked my interest about an individual, and I want to read more about them. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of that. I think that when it comes to a good biography, the writer needs to be a good storyteller and needs to be able to even if you're telling me about an event that I know about, you need to tell it to me in a way that makes it seem fresh or sheds some different light, or I think even just gives some broader context. Again, as going back to what I said earlier about how we often think about and teach and learn history, we learn sets of facts, but oftentimes we don't necessarily know the backstory of some of those events and those. So it's like maybe this analogy will be helpful. How we think about history is oftentimes, if you compare it to watching a play, what's on the stage is often what we kind of read in our history books or are taught in history class. And that's obviously important. But you get a different perspective on the play if you get to go backstage, if you get to talk to the director and get to hear a little bit more of why this happened or why you chose to write the play this way, or what is going on in terms of those kinds of decisions. I would also add that a good biography brings you into the world of the person you're reading about so that you at least understand the broader culture, the broader just what's going on, so that you're not just sort of jumping into an event or an area and you're still thinking of it through your contemporary perspective, but understanding, just to give one simple example, oftentimes when you read certain biographies of people like Jonathan Edwards, which we'll mention here in a little bit, it can be easy in today's contemporary – how can you read about that guy? He was a slaveholder. And you're like, okay, that's a fair criticism. But let's make sure we understand him within his own historical context and understand where all of those sort of issues were at historically in terms of how people thought about them, how people engaged them, so that we're not just like, oh, I can't listen to anything from Jonathan Edwards because he was a slaveholder. And like, okay, well, yeah, we can be critical of that. That's fair. But we should also understand them in their own historical context so that we're not being, in one sense, unfair to them.
Sure.
Even as we're ready to be critical. And that's one more piece I'll add before we move on. I think a good biography is sympathetic to its character, but not so infatuated with that person that it's a skewed picture of who they are.
So maybe I have a question for you that's not on our rundown.
That's okay.
That may get at some of the things. What makes a bad biography?
Well, in some ways, I'd want to say it's the opposite of what we've just described. But poor storytelling, and a one-sided perspective on the person, right? Where it's just either the person from the author's perspective is the most amazing human being who ever lived and never did anything wrong, or this human being is the worst you've ever heard of, and there's no redeeming value to this person at all.
Sure. I would add to those. I think biographers that come in with like an agenda to say like, we want to paint this person in this sort of light for a modern day conversation that we're having.
Yeah, I know who you're thinking about.
Yeah. You know exactly who I'm thinking about. And I have I think one or two of those biographies on my shelf, but yes, where there's the bias is overly whelming to the point where it's misrepresenting the person that they're writing about.
Yeah, and anytime you write a biography, there's going to be by necessity a selectivity, right? You cannot give an exhaustive account, despite some of the attempts of like Dallimore, I can't remember his first name, has written like a 2-volume on George Whitefield. And I forget who wrote – he might have been Dallimore again – wrote a 2-volume on Martin Lloyd-Jones. Where you're just like – I mean, you're 1,000-plus pages in. Those still are not comprehensive. Mm-hmm. The author's still being selective. And so by necessity you need to be selective. However – you still want to be representative and fair in terms of, would any of us survive a description of our life if you just chose our worst moments?
Yeah.
I'm confident they wouldn't, know?
Yeah.
But it also wouldn't be fair to just do our best moments either. Mm-hmm. If you really want to know who a person is, you have to talk about both as well as give context for that. So
yeah. Absolutely. Let's talk favorite biographies. Let's do it. You have a much longer list than I do. So why don't you go ahead and rattle off a few, and then I can rattle off mine, and we'll return to you.
Yeah, I've got them listed on our show notes here, and we'll have links for these in the show notes with the episode. But I'm not going to go in the order that I've got here. I'm going to start with one that I think, even if you don't enjoy biographies, I think this one is interesting, and it's shorter. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with Don Carson's book, Memoirs of an Ordinary Pastor. Yeah,
that's a good one. Not one that I had considered in my list, but yes, that's a very good one.
Yeah, so Don Carson wrote this. It's a pretty short biography. Is it even 200 pages?
I don't think so. Yeah,
that is essentially a biography of his own dad. Mm-hmm. Who was a pastor in Canada, in the French-speaking areas of Canada. And part of what makes it so refreshing is, as Carson admits, is like, my dad was not anybody famous. Mm-hmm. Hence the ordinary pastor. He was just an ordinary pastor who faithfully served, preached the gospel, shared the gospel, loved people, and it is a heartwarming picture of just what he says, an ordinary pastor. And I think sometimes one danger of reading biographies is you get infatuated with the famous people.
Sure.
And you think, well, I can't have an impact on people if I'm not famous. No one will ever write a biography about me. Mm-hmm. So and part of what this I think is really helpful is Don Carson's dad was just an ordinary pastor who faithfully served and had a remarkable impact over a lifetime. And I think that's just a nice entry point into the area of biographies. If you want to read that's not like this, I'm going to commit to 500 pages here.
And I think Don Carson obviously writes it, but I think he uses his father's diary or journal entries as like, here's my source material for this. So it's interesting to see him reflect on sermons and different things like that are happening in life.
Yeah. All right. What about you?
My goodness. I'll throw out Thomas Kidd's The Spiritual Biography of Benjamin Franklin. Have you read this?
I was trying to remember. I have it on my shelf, but I don't think I've read it.
Okay. So I did the audiobook, I think, during the pandemic. And it was just remarkable to see him, Ben Franklin, growing up in Puritan New England, and just not buying into everything that's going on there, but enjoying the values that it brought forward. And that was sort of his staple spiritual belief. Like, I don't believe all of these things. However, they're a good for the society.
Yeah.
And so it was funny to see just how that worked out. His letters with George Whitefield throughout the years and different things like that, and even in his interactions with the Continental Congress and how he advocated for a minister to come in to pray over the Continental Congress, which was interesting.
I think piggybacking off of that, Thomas Kidd also wrote a biography of George Whitefield.
Yes.
That is very good. Have you read that?
I have not.
Very good. So I think Thomas Kidd is an excellent historian and also an engaging writer.
I agree, yeah.
So I think he does a nice job of telling the story in an engaging way, setting the context, helping you understand kind of what life was like during that period so that you can understand those people within their context.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay along the same lines, and this might be my favorite biography I've ever read. So I think I'm going to put this one at the top of the list. George Marsden wrote a biography of Jonathan Edwards.
Okay.
That is widely regarded as this is the definitive one. And it just does such a wonderful job of helping you understand Edwards within his time and inviting you into his life in a way that definitely shows you why he was a great man, but also shows you his flaws and also doesn't pull punches in terms of being critical of Edwards where necessary. And I find that refreshing. I think before that I had read a biography by Ian Murray on Edwards.
Yeah.
That was a little too sanitized.
Okay.
That he was so in love with Edwards that at times you felt like, I don't know that you're being necessarily as critical of Edwards here as you probably should be. So now it is a longer biography. It's 400 or 500 pages, but he has since produced a condensed version. But Marsden's a really good writer, so I don't think it drags. I think it moves along pretty well. So that's probably my number one biography that I think I've ever read. What do you got next, John?
I'll mention, and Zach in Ohio will enjoy this one. John Newton by Jonathan Aiken.
Aiken, I think.
Aiken?
Aitken, I think. Right?
Yes. I think I was at a conference, and they were giving away a free digital download of one of their books. Crossway was, and I picked this up and devoured John Newton. Really, really good story. Goes deep on his slave trading days, as well as his time as a pastor working with William Wilberforce, and they even take a chapter and just go through the history of Amazing Grace, the song. That was quite lovely.
Good. I have read that. It's been a while, but I do remember enjoying that. I'm going to go a step away a little bit from the church history side for just a minute and go with Humphrey Carpenter wrote a biography of J.R.R. Tolkien.
Okay.
That I very much enjoyed. And along with that, this is sort of a companion volume. He edited a collection of Tolkien's letters, which is fascinating because the letters kind of take you back into a behind the scenes of as Tolkien is writing The Hobbit, as he's writing Lord of the Rings. And you in these letters even, you see him wrestling with what kind of character certain characters are going to be. Like there's a section in one of his letters where he introduces Strider, who's Aragorn.
Yeah.
And he makes some comment to the effect of, I don't know what I'm going to do with him, but I'm fascinated by him. Like you see his creative mind just working behind the scenes of that. So Humphrey Carpenter, J.R.R. Tolkien, a biography. You got another one for us?
Yes, and I will move away from the church as well. I can't remember the specific title, but the Alexander Hamilton biography by Ron Chenerow. Have you read a Ron Chenerow biography?
Nope.
He's an excellent writer. It is like 700 pages. So it is super long. I read it one summer. It took me about 3 months to get through. Really, really excellent biography of Alexander Hamilton, our first Secretary of the Treasury, and just his life, living, being born in the Caribbean and going through the struggles and the trials that he went through, coming to New York and really rising to the top. the guy that did the musical read this biography, closed it, and goes, "I must write a musical about this." That was his response.
That was the inspiration. Okay.
Yeah. So you can see like a lot of the things that happen in the biography is connected to the musical directly. And it's interesting. In fact, I watched the musical on Disney Plus with my father last summer, right when it came out. I think July 4th. And my dad was so embarrassed he didn't know anything about this guy that he picked up the biography and read it. So, yeah.
Shout out to Scott Sloat.
Yeah.
I've got more here. I want to make sure I mention 2 more. How many more do you have that you want to mention?
I have 0 more.
Okay. So back into the world of church history, we're going to go a little ways back and go with – this is a classic, right? Harold Bainton, Here I Stand, the Luther biography. It's kind of a classic. Well done. And I remember reading that in a class on Reformation history at my secular university and thinking, wow, I can't believe we get to read this at a secular university. This is great. And then this one is a little bit more off the radar. It's a book by John – I'm not sure how to pronounce this name – Delia, I think, but it's a weird – it's D''Elia. He wrote a biography entitled A Place at the Table, George Eldon Ladd and the Rehabilitation of Evangelical Scholarship in America. And so it's about Ladd, George Ladd, who was an evangelical biblical scholar who primarily was prominent in the 60s and 70s.
Fuller Theological Seminary,
yes.
Right? He was in Southern California.
He was desperate to revitalize evangelical scholarship and get it as Delia refers to it, as a seat at the table in the critical academy to get evangelicals back into the discussion in critical scholarship on the Bible. And so what's sad is he wrote this book on the – I think it was his book, one of his books on the kingdom of God. And he thought, okay, this is going to do it. This is going to get us back. This is going to get evangelicals back at the table. And a critical scholar absolutely trashed it in a review. Just destroyed it unfairly. But still, it was personally devastating. It's probably not quite an exaggeration to say it ruined his life. Like it sent him on a downward spiral in his academic and even in his personal life that was disastrous. And so it's sort of a cautionary tale of don't get your hopes set on academic glory or things like that because it's a fleeting thing.
Yeah.
Anything else on the biographies you got? Are you good?
I think I'm good. Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of things that do not last, let's talk about athletes.
Yeah. Really things that do not last. So we have several good ones today, which is exciting. The number 72.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I think 72 coming through for us. I'll just read them off for us. Carlton Fisk.
Yeah. Most prominently known for his time with the Red Sox.
Yeah.
And famously known for it's just sort of a famous clip in the history of baseball, right? He's with the Red Sox, and he had a huge home run. I think it was against the Reds in the World Series. I forget what year this would have been. Early 70s probably. And he hits the ball down the left field line, and he's like – as he's sort of like hopping to first base, he's like motioning with his hands, like the body language, trying to keep the ball fair. And of course it is, and it's sort of an iconic moment. So Carlton Fisk.
So he played from 72 to 93?
Yeah, he was around forever.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Ed Jones, better known as Ed Too Tall Jones.
Yes, he was 6'9".
The Dallas Cowboys. He would have fit in today's NFL.
Yes, he was more athletic probably than a lot of guys that played his position in that day.
Dan Deerdorf, tackle for the Cardinals.
The St. Louis Cardinals at the time.
St. Louis Cardinals in the 70s into the 80s. Probably best known as a broadcaster.
Yep. Big, thick mustache.
William Perry, better known as William Refrigerator Perry. This is the episode of the nickname.
Yep.
He played defensive tackle for the Bears. Best known as a running back on that 85 Bears team.
Yes. And then for our Ohio State athlete, Dan Wilkinson, better known as Dan Big Daddy Wilkinson, played for the Buckeyes from 92 to 93 and was the first pick in the NFL draft the year he came out. Played for the Bengals.
Very nice.
Had a solid but not great NFL career. So, do you have a leaning, an inclination, a hunch, a gut feeling here?
I think we got to go with a nickname.
Agreed. So we can rule out Dan Deerdorf
and Carlton Fisk.
Although
21 years in the majors.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
So we're down to Refrigerator Perry or Too Tall Jones. I think I'm okay with ruling out Big Daddy Wilkinson.
Big Daddy. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to put Big Daddy in the show title. Oh, my goodness. This is tough. Well, we're in Chicago Bear country.
Yeah.
Maybe Refrigerator Perry might be the way to go.
I'm going to go with Refrigerator Perry as well.
Okay. Sounds good. William Refrigerator Perry it is.
Yes.
Used to get those handoffs and –
Well, it was funny because I was reading up a little bit about him, and he one of the reasons that Mike Ditka, the head coach of the Bears, put him on offense is because his defensive coordinator, Buddy Ryan, wouldn't play him on defense. Which, again, there's just a weird dynamic there between Ditka and Buddy Ryan. But so he put him on the offensive side, and there was a little bit of a controversy. So he's well known for scoring the touchdown in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. They blew him out like 46-10. And there was a little bit of controversy because Walter Payton didn't get to score a touchdown in that game. And so there was all this why are we why are they giving the ball to him when Walter Payton hasn't scored? And anyway. So William Refrigerator Perry, it is. One thing we liked.
Yeah, so this week we celebrated graduation here on Grace's campus, and it was a great time to see some students that I've known for a long time graduate and take a next step in life. So
you're saying it was good to get rid of them? I mean,
I think that's the purpose of the academy is to get rid of students, right? To bring them in and then get rid of them, right?
Okay.
As crass as that may sound, but we graduated a good class of my students this year.
Yes,
5 or 6, and all good guys, and excited to see them go on to great things.
Yes. Okay. So for me, my one thing I liked is one of my favorite comedies of all time. Turned 30 yesterday.
Yeah.
What About Bob?
I saw this on Twitter.
Yes. What About Bob? A great Bill Murray comedy.
Yeah.
It's got Richard Dreyfuss in it. And it is just – it's good on so many different levels. Now, side note, there's a little bit of language in there.
Mm-hmm.
Not awful, but a little bit of language in there.
I saw people on Twitter who I did not know had a sense of humor quoting this movie.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yes.
Perhaps the president of a major evangelical institution.
Yes, did not know.
Not our own, by the way.
Not our own. Yes, I was just I didn't know you could quote. What About Bob? So
yes. Fun fact about that movie, which I didn't even really notice until a few times through. So when Bob is meeting with Dr. Marvin for the first time,
mm-hmm.
and of course, being given the Baby Steps book, and so Dr. Marvin at the end of their little conversation says, "So I'm going on vacation, and while I'm gone for the next 6 weeks or whatever it is, you can call this other doctor who's covering my patients while I'm gone." And the name of that doctor is Dr. Harmon.
Yeah. I watched it, probably in the last year or so and picked up on it.
Yeah, just a fun little fact. But there's so many great lines from that movie, and Bill Murray is just a comedic genius in that.
Yes.
So I recommend that with the caveat of watch out for a couple of scenes where Bob and the son of Dr. Marvin act as if they have Tourette's syndrome,
Yes.
which causes them to blurt out, not like grossly awful obscenities, but
Yeah, mild obscenities.
obscenities.
Yeah.
Yeah. In any case, I think on that note, on the note of obscenities,
Yeah.
I think we have managed to cover our various and sundry topics. We've talked NBA playoffs. We've talked biographies. We've talked William Refrigerator Perry, talked graduation, and of course we've talked about one of the great comedies of the last 50 years, What About Bob? So by definition, I think it's time for us to call mission accomplished.
Yep.
Okay. And so all that leaves us with is to say until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.